Hello, I'm Luciana Spracher, Director of the City of Savannah's Municipal Archives. Today, I'm excited to bring you a little history bite, shining a spotlight on one of our lesser-known city employees from the past. As part of our Hungry for History series, our History Bites are intended to give you a little taste of local history in your busy day. Today, we will be spotlighting the life and work of Richmond Wiley, skipper of the city's Navy. Archives has a backlog of unprocessed collections. Without description, these materials are undiscoverable and thereby hidden. Most archives are constantly trying to catch up and open up as many of their collections to researchers as possible. Recently, while sorting through our own backlog, our archivists discovered this small green-bound scrapbook. Looking through the newspaper clippings, photographs, and notes pasted and slipped inside, we discovered that it was kept by the harbor master's office, which once had an office in City Hall. While most of the items are undated, the time period covered spans the 1950s and 1960s. The scrapbook documents new ships coming to the port of Savannah, special events, shipping records, and one very unexpected and interesting story. An early paste-in is this undated article discussing the problem of trash in the Savannah River Channel. The paper reports that heavy timbers, partially submerged, have caused damage to ships' propellers, and local interests, mainly the U.S. Corps of Engineers and the City of Savannah's harbor master, have come together to eliminate this dangerous hazard. A three-pronged attack on the debris was underway. The harbor master had started performing daily inspections of the waterfront wharves and docks to ensure owners removed dilapidated structures and loose material before they slipped into the river. The Corps of Engineers was using a net to drag under the water's surface and remove hidden objects, and the city had hired a boatman to pick up material floating on the river's surface. This last piece, the city boatman, did not grab our attention until we saw this next article. In 1959, in the Savannah at Work column, staff writer Patrick Kelly featured Richmond Wiley, the city's boatman, though he flipped his name backwards as Wiley Richmond. In the article, titled Skipper of the City's Navy, the unique job of Wiley was described. Hired 4 years earlier as the city's first and only boatman inspecting the port's waters, Wiley was paid $185 a month to travel with the tide between the Seaboard Airline Railway Bridge upriver, above River Street, down to the Standard Oil docks downriver. He used a 12-foot bateau with an outboard motor and oars to make his daily journey. Mayor W. Lee Mingledorff, Jr., at the time, referred to him as Commodore of the Savannah Navy, while his supervisor, Harbor Master Joseph A. Power, said, quote, "The Savannah Navy may be small, but it's dependable. You always find Wiley on the water when he's supposed to be. You can't say that about all Commodores," end quote. That one article revealed a lot of personal information about Richmond Wiley. He was a native of Defusky Island, a former deckhand on an engineering dredge, and while he beds down in Savannah at 224 Charlton Lane during his work week, he returned to Defusky Island every weekend by his own small boat to spend time with his wife and 10 children. Details led me on a hunt to learn more about Wiley, leading to census records, draft registration cards, Defusky Island history, and a conversation with his grandson, Irvin Simmons. Richmond Wiley was born on July 6, 1895 in South Carolina to Jane Hamilton. In 1900, along with his younger brother Peter, he was living with his Hamilton grandparents in Hilton Head. Sometime between the 1920 census, when Wiley was listed as single, and 1926, when his son Richmond Jr. was born on Defusky, he married Geneva Bryan. Both Wiley and Geneva were from Defusky, though the Bryan family was from the South End and Wiley was from the North End. Coming out of the plantation era, the island had developed these separate and distinct communities. Simmons remembers his grandmother Geneva as deeply spiritual, very close-knit to her family, and one who impressed upon him the importance of education. The Wileys had 10 children: Richmond Jr., Calvin, William, Ernest, Alvarina, Janie, Verdell, Lawrence, Josie, and Franklin, named for President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Of the 10 children, 3 are still living: Ernest, Alvarina, and Franklin. Richmond Wiley died of natural causes in 1972, down at the waterfront on Defusky, where he kept his boat. He is buried in Merrifield Cemetery on Defusky Island. On this map, you can see the location of the Wiley property on Defusky Island, marked with the red dot, in relation to downtown Savannah, where Wiley traveled to work each week. Wiley had originally planned to build his family home on the north end of Defusky, where he was from, but Geneva told him that she would only live on the south end, where she had grown up. Probably built in the early 1920s, not 1910 like seen in this note, the house was a 1.5-story frame residence with an assortment of sheds. Simmons remembers his grandfather working in his pastures, tending to his cows and animals. In 1997, the Wiley House was documented as a contributing property on the National Register nomination for Defusky Island. Unfortunately, the house has since been demolished, though the family still retains the 14.5-acre property where Wiley's pastures were. When asked about his grandfather, Irvin Simmons remembers him as a worker, one who was a workaholic even when not on the job. Leading up to his employment with the city of Savannah, Wiley held a number of jobs, as tracked through the federal census records. In 1920, he was living in Savannah with Joe Wiley, possibly another brother, and was working as a laborer in the boat industry. In 1930, he was back on Defusky working as an oysterman while his wife was employed as an oyster shucker. In 1940, he was employed as a laborer for the Works Progress Administration, probably why the family had such an affection for FDR. His World War II draft card indicated that he was back living in Savannah while he worked for Southern State Fertilizer Factory, while Geneva continued to live on Defusky. The last census publicly available from 1950 indicated he was employed as a mill hand. Based on the harbor master's scrapbook and conversation with his grandson, Richmond Wiley likely worked for the city of Savannah from around 1955 until the early 1970s, retiring shortly before he died in 1972. Besides that informative news clipping, the harbor master's scrapbook held several other treasures related to Wiley's work. This series of photographs illustrate his bounty as described in the article. Quote, "When he comes across something big enough to foul the propeller of a freighter or tug, he throws a line on it and tows it downriver to the landing of the Army's Corps of Engineers. There it is lifted ashore by derrick and later destroyed." Wiley's job must have been lonely and boring at times. 5 days a week, from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., he searched the river for driftwood and other hazardous objects. He carried his lunch with him so duty was not interrupted by a break. His grandson remembers him as a loner, perhaps why he was so successful at this solitary job for over 15 years. The scrapbook also includes an envelope full of little loose notes on which Wiley reported his daily hauls. Here are just a few, showing he used whatever scrap of paper he had available, on which he wrote the day of the week, how many pieces of driftwood, and how many timbers. These reports, despite the envelope labeled in an unfavorable manner by the harbor master's office, provide in essence the only employee file we have been able to locate for Wiley, and a tangible connection to the man. Wally hauled in impressive catches. In 1959, he told the reporter of the biggest thing he had ever encountered, likely shown in these scrapbook photographs. It was, quote, "a complete, full-grown oak tree, branches, roots, and all, barreling happily down the middle of the channel. It gave him quite a fight, but he roped it and brought it in like a maverick steer," end quote. Richmond Wiley would likely have been forgotten within the city organization if it wasn't for that little green scrapbook. However, with that find, we have been able to rediscover Wiley's life, legacy, and how he fits into our own city history. I hope you've enjoyed learning about his role in the success of our port in the mid-20th century and how he survived between Savannah and Defusky Island to raise his family. I look forward to sharing our next history bite with you soon.